Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of the podcast. We've got a pretty fun episode today as we'll be continuing to go through the NFL season, talking about weeks 4 and 5. We'll be talking about our initial thoughts of the MLB playoffs. We'll be giving our official NBA predictions for the season, and we will be continuing our top 10 list. As always, I am joined by Nick and Ader, if you would like to say hi.
Not much, just ball goes boom and 9 more, Topper.
Alrighty, so we're not going to waste any time, and we're going to get started with our weeks 4 and 5 reactions for the NFL season. So weeks 4 and 5 are now in the books, and we are a little bit over a quarter, maybe around a third of the way through the season. And it's certainly been an interesting 5 weeks, and I think we're far enough into the season now to where we can start making assumptions about certain teams, and some of the week 1 overreactions that we've made have been proven right, and others have been proven wrong. So there are a few teams in particular, good and bad, that I'm going to shout out. The first one, a team that I was kind of wrong on in a way. Jacksonville looks a lot better. I did not pick the Jaguars to win the division. I still stand by that, but the Jaguars do look like the team to beat in the AFC South, which appears to be a very competitive division with 3 other teams who have a legitimate shot of winning it. Another team I want to shout out, no bias here, but the Lions look really good. Big win on primetime against the Packers, and then steamrolling Carolina as expected. But I am starting to change my expectation a little bit for this Lions team. And not to say I think we're going to win the Super Bowl, but I am starting to think this team is a Tier 2 contender. And to put that in perspective, Tier 1 is not very big. I mean, San Fran's at the top. Maybe you throw in like KC, Philly, maybe Buffalo, and that's about it. Those are probably the only teams that I can comfortably say are better than Detroit right now, which just goes to show how well the Lions are playing, despite the fact that the team has been super banged up. And the injury report got worse today because now Sam Laporte is on it for Lord knows what reason. I guess we'll find out pretty soon. I also want to shout out the Niners. They are comfortably the best team in the league right now. They are on a tier of their own. The Brock Purdy dialogue over the last few weeks has certainly been interesting. For me, at this point, I am done doubting him. The guy is a ball player. He is absolutely... can't speak. He's absolutely better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And yes, he is a system quarterback, but he makes the system go. And I think with him, the Niners are the clear front runners. Some teams who have trended downwards over the last couple of weeks, we've got to start with New England. They look horrible. Their offense is completely inept. Their defense hasn't even been playing well, which is Bill Belichick's staple. And while on one hand, we can't really doubt Bill Belichick, on the other hand, he's never really been out-coached and outclassed like this until right now. He does not look good. The team does not look good. And we could have some ugly conversations about New England in the coming weeks and months. A team that I feel like I was kind of right about not being good is Washington. They were 2-0 to start the year, and everybody was jumping on the bandwagon as them being a sleeper wildcard team, and I just didn't see it. They didn't really pass the eye test to me. They just didn't look all that impressive. And I think I was spot on about that. I don't think the Commanders are very good. I get they played a competitive game against the Eagles in Week 4, but they just don't really impress me, to be honest. The thing that I was wrong about with the Commanders is saying they were equally as bad as the Giants, which is not true because the Giants might be the worst team in the league. But I don't think Washington's very good. They don't move me.
Yeah, last episode we had just finished Week 3, and we were starting to say that we can start to see the true colors of some teams. And we're learning a lot about a lot of different teams. We're learning the Dolphins are ridiculous on offense. They have, I believe, the most yards of total offense through the first 5 weeks, which is just incredible what Tua has been able to do. He's been on a tear lately. And like you said with Brock Purdy is that guy. But Tua is starting to show that he is that guy. We wanted to wait and see what he could do with the full season. I know it's not been a full season, but through 5 weeks, he's been better than when he was in the first 3 weeks last year. The Bills are on a tear. They lost in London against Jacksonville, but that's what happens when you fly across the pond on 2 days before your game. The West, you got the Raiders and the Broncos. They're both those teams are not doing very hot. Broncos possibly looking to start a fire sale with a lot of reports coming out that a lot of players might be on the move. Randy Gregory's already been traded to the Niners. Frank Clark announced earlier today that he's either going to be getting cut or traded probably within the next day or two. The Raiders are the Raiders. Their head coach is Josh McDaniels. They're not doing anything. The Chargers I like, but they just had their bye. We'll see what they can do coming off their bye, playing in Week 6. I don't even know what team it is. I've lost track of things. And then the Steelers are somehow tied for first in the division with the Ravens right now. This AFC North is going to be a bloodbath going down the trends of the schedule. Joe Burrow might finally be back. We got to see him actually play well for the first time this whole season. He was actually scrambling, so maybe he's fully healthy. Maybe the Bengals are back on track. They did play the Cardinals, so it is the Cardinals. But seeing Joe Burrow being able to move, seeing Jamar Chase go off, is trending upward for this Bengals team. The Browns, I think they're playing well, but also Myles Garrett is hurt, banged up a bit. Deshaun Watson might be out for the next good couple weeks. They might not be in it this year just because of all the injuries. The Ravens, they've had their fair share of injuries because it's the Ravens, but their receivers just did not play well. Lamar did not play well against the Steelers in Week 5. They let Matt Canada look like a competent play caller, even though Kenny Pickett audibled in that touchdown pass to George Pickens. That was not Matt Canada's play call. Kenny Pickett had to fix it, which is hilarious to me. The AFC South, I really like the culture doing. I think Shane Steichen is looking up to be a possible Coach of the Year candidate. They have a winning record. AR is out for the next good couple weeks. He's on the IR now. Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting QB for at least the next 4 games, and he's looked actually pretty serviceable. He's been in the Shane Steichen offense playing a few games last year with the Eagles when Jalen Hurts was out for a few weeks. So he's comfortable in this system, and I think he knows what's going to be able to happen. And with the Jags not looking too hot, they haven't started off the best. They might be able to sneak away with this division. And then the NFC, it's a bloodbath. You have the Niners. They're unstoppable right now. They are ridiculous. I think they might have the most points for, except for like maybe the Dolphins. And their defense is probably bottom 2. They're ridiculous. The Eagles are 5-0. They've been ridiculous. But at the same time, we haven't seen the Eagles at their full strength. Jalen Hurts does not look the same. The play calling has not been the same. It just feels like the Eagles aren't playing at that full potential, and yet they're still 5-0, and yet they're still finding multiple different ways to beat their opponents, to the point where if they can get the play calling right, if Jalen Hurts can kind of get straight, and they can start playing at full potential, we will see another Eagles-Niners rematch in the NFC Championship, and it's going to be spectacular unless someone gets hurt again. You mentioned the Giants, they're abysmal, and it's really, really funny to see for me. But that O-line is just really bad, and I know people want to blame Daniel Jones because they have not scored an offensive touchdown in the first half of any game yet in 5 weeks, which is bad. But this O-line for those Giants are just so bad. It is abysmal. Them, the Commanders, the Texans, their O-line has just been really bad this year. But you see C.J. Stroud's performing really well. You see Sam Howell showing good flashes. And Daniel Jones, who has probably the best wheels out of all of them, hasn't done a thing. It is a mystery to what has happened to this Giants team who won 9 games, went to the playoffs, won a playoff game against the Vikings, who themselves are not very good. They're playing about as well as they did last year, but all these one-score games are getting flipped on their head. They just have not performed at the same standard as last year. And the Packers, who I was very high on, I know you were very high on, I think we both had them as wild card teams. We were high on the Jordan Love campaign, but he has been hot and cold every week. I think statistically he's been the worst first half QB, but also like the best second half QB. He has been back and forth between being elite and being benched in a week. So in such a weak division with the Lions taking it away, the Bears and Vikings combining for 2 wins, this Packers team could go out and try and make a wild card team because the rest of the NFC is just the NFC. But with Jordan Love playing inconsistent as hell, I don't think they're going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, I probably should have thought to mention the Packers because I obviously enjoy dancing on their grave. But yeah, they do not look like the team that they were through the first 3 weeks of the year. Maybe we jumped the gun on them. I kind of thought they'd be last year's Seattle, and that's still certainly possible. They're not a bad team by any stretch, but they have not looked great over the last couple of weeks. They got killed by Detroit on Thursday Night Football, and then with a long week, they lost to a Raiders team, and it's not so much that the Raiders won, it's that the Packers were genuinely not good at all in that game, which was rather fun for yours truly. So let's go through our players of the week for weeks 4 and 5. I will point out mine are very similar to the ones that the league themselves gave. There are a couple of differences. For week 4 on offense, I went with Josh Allen for the AFC and Christian McCaffrey for the NFC. Defensively, I went with Khalil Mack with his 6-sack performance. And then in the NFC, I went with Harrison Smith. And then for special teams, I went with Brandon McManus and Jake Elliott. The one difference that I had from the league was that they gave the NFC Defensive Player of the Week to Devin Witherspoon in Seattle, and he was really good. But I thought Harrison Smith was also very impressive and deserved a shout-out.
Yeah, for week 4, again, I'm also very similar. I think I only had one difference besides some special teams. In the AFC, we had Stephon Diggs. I went with the receiver as opposed to Josh Allen. He was phenomenal. But Stephon Diggs went out there and was just playing with that Dolphins defense. On defense, then I went with Khalil Mack. He had 6 sacks. That was the obvious pick. For special teams, I went with Kiami Fairbairn, the kicker for the Texans. He had a lot of points. I forgot what the stat line was, but he was good. In the NFC, CMC is CMC. He is that man. He is on track to maybe win Offensive Player of the Year. He has just been the best skill position player in the NFL. In the NFL, with along probably Tyreek Hill. And on the defense side, I went with Devin Witherspoon. He was phenomenal. He had his breakout game. In special teams, I had who the NFL picked, Jake Elliott. He was great in week 4. He hit the game winner in overtime to help the Eagles win against the Commies.
As for week 5, again, very similar on offense. I went with the 2 no-brainer choices, Jamar Chase and DJ Moore. They were both unbelievable. Defensively, I went with Max Crosby. I think this one could be debated, but I really feel like without Max Crosby, the Raiders don't win that game. And then in the NFC, I decided to be a little bit biased. I went with Aiden Hutchinson. As for the special teams, I went with Greg the Leg Zuerlein and Blake Grupe, the Saints kicker. I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name. The only difference here, again, was the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. The league gave it to Fred Warner, which I can't really argue. Fred Warner was all over the field on Sunday. But I kind of want at least one difference, and Aiden Hutchinson was really good. He leads the NFL in pressures by like 6. So I felt that he deserved a shout-out because he's been phenomenal.
And for week 5, I had to go with the no-brainers. Jamar Chase had nearly 200 yards, had 3 touchdowns. DJ Moore did have 3 touchdowns and 200 yards. He had 230, I think. For AFC Defensive Player of the Year, there were so many different choices. I think Trey Henderson had about 3 sacks. Max Crosby was who the NFL picked. But I went with the guy who was not as stat productive. I went with Trent McDuffie because being able to lock up Justin Jefferson as well as he and also L'Jarius Sneed did against Minnesota to help that Chiefs win, because it was only a 7-point game in the end. If they don't lock up Justin Jefferson, the Vikings probably could easily win that game. So the fact that Trent McDuffie was fantastic against Justin Jefferson pretty much helped them win that game. And then I went with Jalen Carter in the NFC. My bias had to come through. He has looked like the best defense tackle in the league right now as a rookie. He's getting double-teamed more than anybody on this Eagles D-line, and that is saying a lot because it's the Eagles D-line. He had 2 sacks. He had 3 pressures. He had TFL. He was phenomenal against the Rams O-line. And then special teams, I went with Cairo Santos, the kicker for the Bears. And then I went with the punter for the Raiders, A.J. Cole. He had 4 punts, and they were all inside the 20. It was a very defensive game for this game, so a punter is going to have a lot of kicking to do. And when you get all 4 in the 20 and helping your defense lock up Jordan Love with 3 interceptions, that's going to help you get the win.
So now that we are roughly around a quarter of a way through the year, let's make our early award picks, sort of combining what we've seen so far through the 5 weeks of the season and what we can continue to see. So I'll go first. I'll start with the MVP, and I think there are a few guys certainly in contention. Tua's had a big year in Miami. Josh Allen has played very well after his poor week 1. I think Lamar Jackson has played some of the best football I've seen from him over the last few years. Brock Purdy or CMC in San Francisco could work. But for me, I have a hard time going against Patrick Mahomes here, and his numbers aren't going to pop off the page through the 5 weeks of the year. He hasn't necessarily been the cut-and-dry best quarterback in the NFL, but for him to do what he's doing in that situation is really impressive. Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney as your starting receivers, how is any quarterback supposed to succeed there? And Mahomes is still thriving. So for me, I think what he's been able to do is still playing like a top 5 quarterback is so impressive, and I'm more confident in him than anybody to continue to play well. As for the offensive and defensive player of the years, for the offensive player of the year, it's Christian McCaffrey. I don't think there's much of an argument for anyone else. Justin Jefferson would have been in the race. Now that he's hurt, probably not. I guess you can make a case for Tyreek Hill. He obviously opens up that Dolphins offense in such a significant way. So if not CMC, it's probably Hill. But what Christian McCaffrey has done this year is absolutely unbelievable. As for the defensive player of the year, I think it's pretty much the same regular pass rushers that we normally see, which isn't too big of a surprise. But through 5 weeks for me, I think it's TJ Watt so far. I think what he's been able to do is really impressive. Last week, I think he dislocated his finger super badly, and he still played, and he played pretty damn well. So I think he's been the best defensive player in the league so far, and I don't expect him to slow down. As for the Rookie of the Years, this is where things get really fun because the rookie class has been phenomenal. My offensive Rookie of the Year for right now is probably CJ Stroud. I would very strongly consider Devin Achane, but he's only played in 3 games really so far, and now he's on injured reserve, so I don't think he's going to play enough games. Puka Nacua is a good option as well. I don't think he's necessarily going to keep up the current pace he's on, but if he keeps up 75% of this pace, he probably will be my pick. Bijan Robinson has been great as well. Can't really go wrong there, but for now, I think CJ Stroud is the best bet. And then defensively, I feel like there's a big debate about this, even though there really shouldn't. Jalen Carter is an absolute monster. He's been arguably the best player at his position in the NFL. I think he's the clear pick at this point, and there have been some other good defensive rookies. Christian Gonzalez was playing really well before he got hurt. Brian Branch is a dog. Devin Witherspoon is a dog. Will Anderson is a dog. Tuli Tuipulotu with the Chargers has been really good so far. But I don't see how I can pick against Jalen Carter. He's been too good, and I think he's going to continue to get better as he gets more snaps.
Yeah, for the MVP, I originally had Justin Herbert being the winner. I think he's still in the conversation as of this moment. I think he's going to pick it up right after the bye. He's going to get going after it. But Mahomes is a great option. Tua has been on fire. But I think after week 1, the best player in the league, at least quarterback-wise, has been Josh Allen. I think he's been on a tear. And I think if they didn't fly in on Friday for the Sunday morning London game, he probably throws 3-4 touchdowns against the Jags because he has been that good. And he was still good on still running on jet lag. I think Josh Allen has been phenomenal. And for a very injury-prone Bills right now who have lost 3 of their defensive starters in the past 2 weeks, he's been phenomenal. For Offensive Player of the Year, like you said, it is CMC. He has been phenomenal. Jefferson's on IR, so he's not going to play enough games. Tyreek Hill is the only other person that you could even argue, but it has to be CMC. He has been the best skill position player in football, and I don't think it's even close. Defense Player of the Year, there's a lot of names you can throw out there. You can throw Michael Parsons, you can throw Myles Garrett. If you wanted to, you could throw out Aiden Hutchinson, but I think it's TJ Watt by far and away right now, and it's not even close. I think the next person to have as many sacks as him is like Khalil Mack, and he had 6 in one game, and he's had 6 all year. And like you said, the rookies is where it gets fun, that you can throw 4 or 5 names out for offensive and defensive rookie, and you can make an argument for all 5 of those players. But I think in the end, there's going to be 3 finalists for each, and I think they're all going to have very good conversations. For the offensive rookie, I think it is going to be CJ Stroud. My agenda is thriving. He has been phenomenal for a Texans team who, on paper, don't have the greatest of offenses. Dameon Pierce has not been good. Their O-line is injured as hell. They have so many backups with third stringers. Nico Collins is a dog. Tank Dell's a dog. Dalton Schultz is a reliable tight end. And C.J. Stroud has been one of the most efficient QBs in the league as a rookie with a first-time play caller and a backups on their O-line. He has been phenomenal. Puka Nacua has been playing great. Bijan Robinson is him. Devin Chan probably would also be in the conversation if he didn't also get hurt. But I think it's going to be C.J. Stroud, and also it's quarterback bias. It's going to happen. Defense Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson has been really good. Brian Branch has been one of the best corners, safety hybrids in the league this year. We have Devin Witherspoon, who has been good. It took him a little bit, but he's been good. Christian Gonzalez, he's been good, but he's hurt now for the rest of the year. But I don't think it's even close. It's going to be Jalen Carter. He has been phenomenal. He has, I think, maybe the most amount of sacks compared to all the other rookies. I think he's at 4.5, maybe 5 right now. He's top 5 in pressures. He has been one of the best DTs in the league. And for a position that it's hard for rookies to translate from college to the NFL, and being this good already is ridiculous. I'm going to move on to the other awards that Akti forgot. Coach of the Year, there's multiple different options. DeMeco Ryan has been great for the Texans. Shane Steichen's been really good with the Colts. He's brought them to a winning record. But I think Mike McDaniel bringing the Dolphins to a 4-1 record is just phenomenal. He's easily become one of the best coaches in the league. Comeback Player of the Year, it's Damar Hamlin, and there's no discussion. I don't care what you say. And I had the idea of bringing up a breakout player of the year, kind of similar to the most improved player of the year that the NBA has. There's a couple guys you can throw in there. Tua is a good idea. I like to bring up Josh Allen on the Jags. He has been really good after kind of not having that many stats pop out of you. But I think it's DeAndre Swift right now after being traded for pennies on a dime and not being very good and being replaced by Jahmyr Gibbs. He's broken out in this Phillies offense to become just phenomenal, and he is top, I think, 4 in rushing yards right now, and he didn't even play week 1.
I'll go over the awards that slipped my mind. Comeback Player of the Year is Damar Hamlin. Coach of the Year, there's some good choices. I think DeMeco Ryans is a very good choice. I think people are sleeping on Shane Steichen. I think he's done a phenomenal job with the Colts, and I think they have looked very respectable. I do not think Dan Campbell would be a true Coach of the Year candidate unless the Lions were a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and I'm starting to think that might be the case, so I'm going to throw his name into the ring. Some other good choices include Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. I would guess he's probably the overall favorite to win it, and I'm not going to argue with that. He has been absolutely fantastic. So I would say those are probably the best choices as of now. Maybe you throw in a guy like, God forbid, Todd Bowles. I get he's not the greatest, but if the Buccaneers keep winning, you're going to have to give them some credit. As for the Comeback Player of the Year, I haven't taken a ton of time to truly think of the good answer. So if I do, I'll put it on the screen now. The name in my head, though, is Nico Collins with the Houston Texans. I was very high on him coming out of Michigan, and he has really played well this year. Part of that has been having C.J. Stroud throwing him the ball and having another big-time weapon there with Nathaniel Dell. So I think there might be a better answer that's just not clicking to the top of my head. But I feel like Nico Collins is somebody who wasn't really expected to be a true alpha receiver, and through 5 weeks, he has been exactly that. So with that, we will now shift our attention to the MLB playoffs. The division series is almost over, and it's been certainly interesting so far, so let's talk about it. So for the viewers watching at home, keep in mind we are recording this on Thursday. 3 of the 4 division series have ended. The Phillies and Braves will be playing their Game 4 tonight, and if necessary, there will be a Game 5 on Saturday. I anticipate this would be up before a possible Game 5 if it happens. So just keep in mind we're talking before we know what happens in Game 4. But the results have been interesting so far as the Rangers and the Astros will play in the ALCS, and the Diamondbacks are currently waiting in the NLCS. Who would have thought this is going to happen going into the playoffs, let alone going into the regular season? And I feel like I have to start with the whole idea of, is these higher seeded teams getting rest truly bad and truly affecting them? And a lot of people are shooting this down. I believe there is something there with this. It was the case last year when these teams got off. They looked flat. The Dodgers and Orioles did not win a single postseason game. The Braves are struggling as well. Part of it is absolutely coincidental because the MLB playoffs are so unpredictable. Any baseball team can win any game. That's just how the MLB season is. And when you get into the playoffs, if you can get a hot lineup, and if you can get a hot pitching staff, you can win the World Series, as we saw with the Phillies last year, who came out of nowhere. The Diamondbacks coming out of nowhere this year. They have not lost a single playoff game yet. So I think there is something there with teams getting off. That's not the only reason why teams like the Orioles, Dodgers, and Braves have struggled so far. But I think everyone brushing this under the rug is also wrong in a way. All the series have been pretty entertaining so far. I've enjoyed watching Minnesota's rise. Royce Lewis is a star. The Rangers have been phenomenal. The Diamondbacks have been phenomenal. Those two teams have not lost a single game yet. And, of course, the vibes around Red October. How can you not enjoy that if you're not an Atlanta Braves fan? The bank is buzzing, and I imagine tonight that place is going to be electric.
Yeah, looking at this postseason, it like you said, it's looking at those higher seeds and seeing if the rest is affecting them. It affected the Dodgers and the Braves last year as they both lost in the NLDS, possibly as they both will this year. But last year, both the American League 1 and 2 seeds made it to the ALCS for the Astros and Yankees. This year, the Astros made it because of the Astros, but the other team is the Orioles, who have not been in the postseason for forever. So you have a young, inexperienced team in the playoffs, they might not perform as well. And I know the Rangers haven't been either, but you have Corey Seager and Marcus Semien who have been in the playoffs. You have players on that team who have been in the playoffs, as opposed to the Orioles, where they've been at Baltimore their entire career. They haven't been touched the postseason besides on the Tides. So I'm not ready to go out and say that these buys for these teams aren't good. I think in some cases they can be good if you're injured. Like the Braves had some injuries to guys like Mike Soroka. So we'll see what's going to happen with the Game 4 and Game 5. But looking at like that Braves-Phillies series specifically, you could look at the injuries. You could look at the rest. Spencer Strider went 7 innings of one-run ball. He was fantastic. Game 2, their pitcher, I cannot remember my life who they pitched, but he was solid. We put up 4, but our bullpen just tanked it. And Game 3, they essentially had a bullpen game, and Brian Sichter just tanked the job of managing that pitching rotation. He kept a guy who was really bad in Bryson Elder in the second half of the year against Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper went bomb. I was very excited to see that. I literally told myself he's either striking out or he's going yard, and he went yard. But looking at teams like the Diamondbacks, you and me are both very high on the Diamondbacks going into this year, but we weren't ready to put them in the postseason just yet. They got in as the 6th seed, and they are raring to go. They have not lost a game yet. They swept the Brewers. They swept the Dodgers. And again, with those buys, you can look at it like they are too tired. But these are divisional games. The Diamondbacks, Dodgers, Phillies, Braves, these are divisional games. So I think, similar to NFL, divisional games washes the slate clean. Specifically in playoff baseball, every slate is clean. You saw last year the Phillies were the 6th seed. They went all the way. The Diamondbacks should do the same thing here. We have the Rangers who are a 4 seed. They were good, but again, they're a 4 seed just like the Phillies. They could go all the way. If the Astros lose, we're going to have a wild card team win the World Series, unless the Braves get out of it. But going into playoff baseball, a lot of people like to go out and say, oh, pitching, that's what you need. You need a big 3-man rotation. And a lot of these teams do have it. I think the Diamondbacks, they have Zach Gallen, and maybe that's it. I can't think of anyone else who is like really good, at least on Zach Gallen's status. The Phillies have a great 3-man rotation. The Astros is not that bad. They have Verlander. They have Framber Valdez. They have the other guy. I think Chris Javier is hurt. There's a third guy I'm missing. But a lot of these teams, they're not focused on pitching. They're focused on sending the ball gone to just destroy pitching, get people into the bullpens faster. That's what the Phillies have been doing. That's what the Rangers have been doing. The Rangers put up so many home runs. The Twins, even though they lost, they were hitting bombs. Carlos Correa was insane against his old team. Royce Lewis, I think, had 4 or 5 home runs in the 6 games they played. And the Phillies tied the record for most home runs in a single postseason game the other night with 6. Bryce Harper going twice, Castellanos twice. I think Marsh, and I don't remember who the other one was. I'm forgetting one. But the point being, playoff baseball is insane. And right now, the theme of this postseason is ball go boom. The Diamondbacks had 4 solo shots to 1 inning. That's a record. The Phillies had 6 in a game. That's a record. The Astros, what's his name? Yordan Alvarez has been insane. Jose Altuve has been going bomb. Jose Abreu has been going yard. And the Rangers, they have Corey Seager. They have Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia. All 4 of these teams, even the Braves are going bomb with Austin Riley's go-ahead winner in Game 2. So between these 4 or 5 teams, their gimmick is ball go boom. Let's just keep running up the score and just keep it going. And I think that's going to be the theme for these championship series and this World Series, whatever matchup we end up getting.
I do enjoy ball go boom. So let's make our predictions of what happens the rest of the way. In the American League, I'm very intrigued by this series between the Rangers and the Astros. The Astros had the upper hand on the Rangers significantly during the regular season, but I could see the tides shifting. The Rangers pitching staff has gotten hot. Their offense is playing really well. I think I'm going to pick the Rangers to make the World Series. As for the National League, the Phillies are up 2-1. I have a hard time thinking they're going to lose both games. I could certainly see it happening, but I'm going to pick the Phillies to beat the Braves, and I'm going to pick the Phillies to beat the Diamondbacks, leading us to a Phillies and Rangers World Series. And as strong as the vibes are with the Phillies, I think I'm going to lean towards the Rangers right now. Now, depending on the hour, my answer might change with that. But I think for right now, I'm going to pick the Texas Rangers. Those guys look pretty invincible at the moment. Their offense is really producing. Their pitching is really producing. But right now, the Rangers are my World Series pick. And not to mention, Max Scherzer should probably be healthy pretty soon. I didn't even think to mention that, but I think they're going to have him back, which is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's going to be hard for the Phillies not to win at least one of these games. Ranger Suarez will be pitching Game 4, and most likely have Zach Wheeler in Game 5, who pitched a strong game in Game 2. He had 6 scoreless, I think, until he went to the 7th, let up 2. So both of these pitchers have been really good against the Braves in this series, and they've been really good throughout the regular season. So I think the Phillies are going to be able to beat the Braves going into these championship series. You could go either way with the Astros or Rangers. You could argue who has the better pitching. It might be the Rangers just because the Astros are really banged up. But I think the Astros have the upper hand against their divisional rivals. The last series they played against each other, the Astros put up double-digit runs in all 3 of these games. I know that doesn't mean anything really in the grand scheme of things, but I think the Astros kind of have the upper hand. They're a lot more experienced in the postseason than these Rangers, who haven't been in a good while. I think the Astros are going to get the upper hand, get into the World Series yet again. And same thing, Phillies, Diamondbacks. I think the Phillies, their vibes are stronger. The Diamondbacks have a lot of vibes. I love this team. But I think the Phillies have the veterans with Bryce Harper, Castellanos, JT, Trey Turner. We have a lot of players who know how to do it in the postseason. I know the Diamondbacks are great, but I think the pitching is going to catch up to them. I don't think they're going to be able to do what they did to Lance Lynn against Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be a rematch with Philly and Houston in the World Series, just like last year. I believe it'll be Houston who gets home field advantage first. And I'm going to be biased, but I think my agenda is here. I think the Phillies are going to be able to get revenge. I think the Astros pitching is not nearly as good as it was last year. I think Christian Javier is hurt, so he won't be able to help throw a no-hitter against us. So I think we'll be fine. I think our hitting has been a lot better lately than it has with the Astros. I think our pitching is better. I think at this moment, I think we might be the best all-around team, assuming we beat the Braves. And I think that's going to help the Phillies prepare to go into this World Series, get Bryce Harper his ring, get JT a ring. Trey Turner gets, I think, ring 2. I think he was there for 2020 for the Dodgers, Mickey Mouse ring. And all these players, Kyle Schwarber gets a ring. I don't think he got one. Was he on the Cubs in 2016?
Yeah, he was, I think.
Well,
he was.
He'll get another ring then. Either way, he'll get a ring. JT gets a ring. Bryce Harper is the big one. I want to see Bryce Harper get a ring, and I think everyone else in the MLB fan base wants to see Bryce Harper get a ring. He is one of the best players in baseball currently that does not have a ring, and I think he is one of the players that deserves it the most. And I think this playoff team is ready to go, and Bryce Harper is ready to carry this Phillies roster and bring them to a World Series. I'm going to say Phillies in 6, sure.
I will say this about Trey Turner, though. He does not have a Mickey Mouse ring. He has a real ring. He was not on the Dodgers when they won it, but he was on the Nationals the year prior. So he does have a real ring. Yeah, he was on that team with Juan Soto and all of them. And also with Christian Javier. With Christian Javier, he is healthy. He pitched, I think, like a day or two ago. He has not been anywhere near as good as he was last year. And his first postseason outing after the no-hitter in the World Series, he didn't pitch as well. Instead of allowing 0 hits, he allowed 1. So with that, we will now shift our focus onto the NBA. We've done our Eastern and Western Conference previews over the last couple of episodes. Now it's time to give our official predictions of what we think is going to happen this year. The start of the NBA regular season is right around the corner. Training camp has started. Preseason has started. We saw Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren duel the other day. It appears that both of those guys are very, very good at basketball. So before we give our predictions, though, right after we recorded the last episode, within 24 hours, Damian Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, followed a few days later by Jrue Holiday going to the Boston Celtics. So real quick, we're going to give our reactions there. It's not an instant reaction because it happened like 2 weeks ago, but just go with it. So I think the Damian Lillard trade was really good for all parties. For Milwaukee, you get another superstar to pair with Giannis. And it seems very clear from Giannis that he would love to stay with Milwaukee if they are still focused on winning. If they're going to continue to make moves to better this roster, what do? They go out and get one of the 10 to 15 best players in the league. It sucks losing Jrue Holiday, but Damian Lillard is absolutely an upgrade for Jrue Holiday, and you were able to keep most of your role players intact. They lost Grayson Allen. I think you can do without dirty old Grayson Allen. I thought Portland made out really well. DeAndre Ayton is going to be an interesting addition. A buy low candidate from the Suns. I think he's going to potentially rejuvenate himself there. And they got a ton back for Jrue Holiday from the Boston Celtics. They got Robert Williams. I'm really curious to see how the Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton front court fits, because naturally you don't think of those guys as a fit together, but I do think they've got some athleticism and versatility, and I want to see how it plays out before jumping to conclusions. The Blazers also got some draft picks down the line as well, and they were able to unload some contracts over to Phoenix. I thought the Suns made out fine, considering what DeAndre Ayton has been through them. I guess getting Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, and Grayson Allen really is not that bad of a return. I think they definitely made their roster better for this year. And then with Boston getting Jrue Holiday, that's an awesome addition. Losing Marcus Smart stings, but Jrue Holiday is Marcus Smart, but better. So I think all four teams involved with the Dame and Jrue trades are winners. I think everybody made out well, which you don't normally find to be the case often. And maybe this ends up blowing up in one or two of these teams' faces. But just based off of what these teams got, I really like it for everyone.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think all four of these teams that were involved in these trades were making out like winners, essentially. And I remember there was a lot of talks about what next big star might ask for a trade like Damian Lillard. You had talked about Luka when his contract's up. Joel Embiid might be unhappy. We still have the whole James Harden situation. But I think one of the more underrated guys to look at was Giannis, because he has been publicly saying if the Bucks aren't looking to be contenders, they don't get him help, he's going to go out and go get himself another ring instead. So they go out and they get Damian Lillard. And I know it sucks losing Jrue Holiday. You lose the defense, but Damian Lillard's shot creation and just Damian Lillard vibe is just more immaculate than Jrue Holiday's perimeter defense. And I think pairing a guy who has the offense capability like that paired with Giannis, his defense and his offense, is just a ridiculous duo to where you could argue that they are now the favorites to win the championship, along with, say, the Nuggets and the Bucks. And the Bucks make out like bandits this offseason. They trade Marcus Smart, and they're able to get Kristaps Porzingis for and a first for almost nothing. So you upgrade your front court, and then you lose Marcus Smart, which sucks, but you get better Marcus Smart, who's Jrue Holiday, who's a better defender and a better offensive player. And the Celtics, they lost in almost embarrassing fashion. They came back 3-0, and then they lost in Game 7 to the Heat. So they just go out and just get more players for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to be around. So now they don't have to carry this Celtics team on their backs. You have guys like Jrue Holiday to help with the defense. You have Porzingis to help down low. You have all these players, and where the Celtics can look like they are a top 3 team and they are ready to go get themselves a ring. But you have to get through that fight with Giannis and Damian Lillard, which is still crazy to say 2 weeks after. The Suns get out of the DeAndre Ayton trade. I like that for Portland, being able to get another buy low candidate. You're in a rebuild phase. Let Scoot Henderson be the engine to that offense and get a few players who could outperform what you think they're going to be able to do, and maybe get a better piece here or there for your future. But I think the main thing is to be able to get Scoot Henderson on the court more often. When the first Dame trade happened, I think they only got one first-round pick out of that, which It's kind of embarrassing for Damian Lillard, but then you get 2 from the Bucks for Drew Holiday, so it kind of adds up. You get DeAndre Ayton, you get Brogdon, Robert Williams. I think you had 3 or 4 first-round picks, which is, I think, a really good haul for Damian Lillard and Drew Holiday. I think they're able to focus on the future now, finally being able to part ways with their franchise hero, Damian Lillard, and look to the future with guys like Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and all these other young guys. And the Suns are able to build for the now. They are obviously going in for that championship with KD, Book, Bradley Beal. And now they get Nurkic to help with the front court, and they're looking to go out and get that ring and fight guys like the Nuggets.
So now let's go through our official NBA Finals predictions, and we gave who we thought would make it to the Finals in our Eastern and Western Conference predictions, but we obviously have the Damian Lillard and Drew Holiday deals, and sometimes people's opinions change, such as my own. I originally picked the Suns to make it out of the Western Conference, and I'm kind of having second guesses. I don't think the role players on that roster are going to be good enough. So I think the Western Conference is a little bit more interesting than the East because there's a few more different variables here. The Nuggets obviously made it last year. I think they're a little bit worse, losing Bruce Brown, which I think is going to be a big loss, but I think they should be fine generally, and I think they are probably the obvious favorite. There are a few other teams, though, that I'm strongly considering. I want to mention the Clippers. If they stay healthy, I think they've got a great chance. I'm not betting on that happening anymore. I have gotten bit in the rear end too many times by the Clippers. I'm not doing it again. A team that I'm very high on, if everything comes to form, is the Lakers. I think they've done a really good job over the last year of building their roster, which is crazy because before that I thought they did a really bad job. Now this is dependent on Anthony Davis staying healthy and LeBron James not taking a step down. LeBron is one of the 10 best players in the NBA at worst at 38 years old. But I feel like last year, for the first time, we did see him look vulnerable a little bit. He was banged up throughout the year, and it looked like he was starting to slow down, not so much in his performance, but more so how much he could keep up. If LeBron does not take a step down, the Lakers are my pick to win the Western Conference, but at 38 years old, I can't trust that to really be the case anymore. So I think for now, I'm going to pick against the Lakers. With me not willing to pick the Lakers, the Clippers, or the Suns, there's not really many other choices. I don't trust Memphis right now, especially with the Ja Morant stuff. I don't trust Sacramento. I like the Kings. I think they're good. I don't think their finals good. And I've talked about the Warriors. I am a little bit concerned about them. Maybe not so much for this year, but in the future. And I think we start to see that team finally crack a little bit this year. So this really leaves us with one team, and it's the Denver Nuggets. I think Denver is going to be my pick to make it out of the Western Conference. I don't feel great about it, but I have nobody else I can pick. As for the Eastern Conference, I would be shocked if it's not one of Milwaukee or Boston. I don't think the Miami Heat are going to make it back. I don't think they've improved their roster enough. They've had opportunities to do so, and they haven't done it. I think Max Strus and Gabe Vincent are going to be big losses. Now, knowing the Heat, they're going to find their new Max Strus and Gabe Vincent pretty easily. Cole Swider had like 17 points in the fourth quarter of their preseason game, so maybe it's him. But I just don't think the Heat are at the level of those top two teams. I think Milwaukee and Boston are the two best teams in the league. And if I were to pick one of them right now, I'm definitely going to be rooting for Milwaukee as a big Damian Lillard fan. But I think the way the Boston Celtics have constructed their roster makes it really hard for me not to pick them. With the additions of Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday, I think the Celtics had the perfect roster around Jason Tatum as your 1A, Jaylen Brown as your 1B. You've got Porzingis, who can stretch the floor and defend. Drew Holiday is one of the best defensive guards in the league. And they've got a good group of role players. Look at Derek White, for example. I think he's the perfect fit with those guys. Al Horford at 36, 37 years old. He's still got a lot left in the tank. So I'm going to pick the Celtics to make the finals, and I'm going to pick them to beat the Denver Nuggets in 6 games.
Just like you, looking at that Western Conference, it's hard to not pick the Nuggets. I think the only other teams you could realistically pick would be the Suns picking on their upside, the Clippers picking up on PG and Kawhi and Russ playing healthy and playing well. And as you mentioned, the Lakers, they showed that they have what it takes to kind of go on a long run, and it's just they got stopped by probably should have been MVP Jokic and finals Jamal Murray. I had originally picked the Nuggets. I don't see any reason to change it. I do want to shout out the Pelicans. If they are able to stay healthy, I have them at like the 3 seed, I think. So I am looking forward to see what they could do, but I don't think they're going to be able to do much going to a finals run. So I'm going to stick with the Nuggets. And I had the Cavs kind of going on a run in the Eastern Conference, and they could still do that, but with the additions of Damian Lillard to the Bucks, Drew Holiday to the Celtics, I think it has to be one of those two teams. I don't think teams like the Sixers, the Heat, or the Cavs are going to be able to keep up with the talent that those two teams have. And it could be either one. I think we're going to end up getting the Bucks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, and it's going to be a very, very fun series to watch. But the upside of Dame and Giannis together just intrigues me so much, and I think I'm going to pick them to win the Eastern Conference just because I know you have Porzingis, and I know you have Drew Holiday, but playoff Dame and playoff Giannis, when they are determined to go get a ring, might be unstoppable. And I'm going to go with the Bucks, and I'm going to go with them in the finals in probably 7 games against Jokic and Jamal Murray.
All right, let's go through our award predictions now. I will go first. For the MVP, there's a lot of great candidates. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this guy is the best player in the world, but I think this team is going to be the best in the league. I think this player is still going to get his numbers, and I picked his team to win the finals. I've got Jason Tatum winning his first MVP. History says we don't find a lot of previous winners from the past winning again. There's a real thing of voter fatigue in the NBA, whether it's fair or not. This is a prediction, not what I think should happen. And I think Jason Tatum's going to continue to take a step up. I think he's going to be my pick for the MVP. For the Rookie of the Year, I have a hard time picking against Victor Wembanyama. I think Chet Holmgren's got a real shot as well, and I think Scoot Henderson's going to be very good as well. I think he's going to be a lot more efficient than a lot of the other young guards we have seen enter the league. But I think it's going to be between Wemby and Chet, and for right now, I'm going to pick Victor Wembanyama. The Sixth Man of the Year is pretty interesting. I took a look at the odds before this. Emmanuel Quickley is one of the favorites at plus 800. I really like Emmanuel Quickley there for the Knicks. I think he's got a real shot. I'm going to pick Malik Monk, though, in Sacramento. I feel like Monk has become one of the more underrated players in the league. It didn't entirely work out in Charlotte, but he did improve there. And here in Sacramento, I think this is a great fit for him, reunited with his former backcourt mate at the University of Kentucky and De'Aaron Fox. So I've got him winning the Sixth Man of the Year. As for the Defensive Player of the Year, there's a lot of good candidates here. But for right now, I think I am going to pick Evan Mobley. In his second season, he was one of the best defensive players in the NBA. And I think he could continue to take another leap up defensively. And I think as of right now, the Cavs might be the third or fourth best team in the Eastern Conference. As for Most Improved, this is always one of my favorite awards because there's so many intriguing candidates, and it's always somebody who generally isn't necessarily a guy you would expect. As I look at the top of the odds list, you've got guys like Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Maxey, Jordan Poole, Cade Cunningham. I think all those guys are really good. Now, I think if Mikal Bridges were to really win it, I think last year would have been the year. It's just that Lauri Markkanen improved even more. I don't like Jordan Poole there. He's going to get more shots. That doesn't necessarily mean he's better. I think Tyrese Maxey's going to take a real step up. I don't mind that guess. And then as for Cade Cunningham, I feel like it's almost expected with him technically in year 3 that he does take that leap up, so I'm not really sure he should win it. A name I like down the board, he's plus 3,500, but I think he's really going to step up this year. That's Jaden McDaniels with the Minnesota Timberwolves entering his 4th season. McDaniels is one of the best defensive players in the league already. So if he can take an offensive leap, and he's gotten better as a scorer in his first 3 seasons, I definitely see a world where he can be the most improved player as he continues to improve as a jump shooter. He's got guys on that offense who can help space the floor and create for themselves. So McDaniels, even being the third option with Minnesota's offense, he doesn't need to be much more than that because he's already a great defender. And I don't think a lot of people are really seeing it coming, which is why I'm going to pick him to win the award. As for the Coach of the Year, I think I'm going to pick J.B. Bickerstaff in Cleveland. I think the Cavaliers could take a sizable jump. They were the 4 seed last year, but I think they're really going to put themselves in the class of the Eastern Conference, somewhere in the top 3. And off the top of my head, I don't think there's another team who's going to take a big enough jump like Cleveland, at least at the top, to win it. If we're looking for somebody who's on a lesser team who jumps up, I'm high on Indiana. I had them making the playoffs. Rick Carlisle's a very experienced coach there. He's a good choice. I'm super high on Orlando as well. So if Jamal Mosley does a great job of coaching them, I think he could be a good choice. I think OKC could take a leap. I think Mark Daigneault, I definitely butchered his name. We'll call him Mark. I think Mark could be a big reason as to why I think he could be a really good Coach of the Year candidate. But for right now, I'm going to go with Bickerstaff.
Looking at that big award in the MVP, we have seen multiple players win it multiple times. We've seen Giannis win it twice. We've seen Jokic win it twice. We saw Embiid win his first last year. But as you mentioned, voter fatigue is insane. I think in the NFL, people are starting to get it with Patrick Mahomes. I think people might start getting it with Shohei Ohtani, MLB. And we're going to have people, we have people seeing it with Giannis. We've had people go on it with Steph, with Jokic now, after Jokic did not win last year, even though he probably should have. But I am going to fight the norms, and I think pairing up with Damian Lillard, I think Giannis is going to somehow go on another tear and go out and win, I believe, his third MVP. It's been a little bit since he won his last one, and I think this is the year where he goes out, wins another one, go out and win another finals, get Dame a ring, get himself a second ring. For Defensive Player of the Year, I was really sad that you said this, but it's a fairly obvious pick. I went with Evan Mobley. I have the Cavs going up to a 3 seed, kind of going up there with the Bucks and Celtics being a phenomenal team in the East. And I think part of that is going to be Evan Mobley stepping up as a defender, kind of similar to what Triple J did last year. He's been taking steps each year in the league, and I think this year's going to be no different. For Rookie of the Year, this is an extremely fun class. We've had a lot of players, not even in the lottery, show up. But I think it's looking like it's going to be Victor. It's probably going to be Victor. So I'm not going to pick Victor. I'm going to be separate. I'm going to pick Chet Holmgren. I think he's been phenomenal, and as long as he doesn't get injured, I think him and Victor are going to be fighting back and forth for the award. And I'm going to go with Chet just because I think the team success of the Thunder is going to help him prepare. And also, paired up with SGA is going to be a really good way to help him with his stats and who he is as a player. For sixth man, there's a lot of players you can go with. You mentioned Emmanuel quickly. You picked Malik Monk. But I wanted to go, maybe not like crazy. It's plus 1,500. But I went with Bobby Portis of the Milwaukee Bucks. I think coming in when Giannis needs to sit for a minute, if he's on the court with Damian Lillard, I think that duo is just mini Giannis and Dame, which is still a fairly good duo. And I think being able to help with Damian Lillard on the court, being able to help with the defense, and it could just being able to get open down in the paint with Dame on the court, I think that's going to help him prepare to go out and win six man. For most improved, you mentioned there's a lot of different players that could win it. I would love to see Tyrese Maxey win it because I'm biased. I like the idea of Josh Giddey. If the Thunder make a big move, I like the idea of really anyone on the Pelicans roster just because I have them making such a big jump. We could see DeAndre Ayton make a big jump now that he's on a new team. But I had the Pistons making the play-in. And I think that is going to be because of Cade Cunningham. And I think it's obvious pick. But I think if the Pistons make the play-in, get a 9 or 10 seed, it's going because Cade Cunningham has stepped up, has become the all-star that he looks like he can be, and looks like to be a perennial possible MVP for years to come. So I'm going with him. And for Coach of the Year, it could be the Pistons coach. I don't even know his name. But because I have the Pelicans going up, getting a top 3 seed, I'm going to go with Willie Green of the Pelicans. I think being able to help that roster, help Zion stay on the court, stay focused on the court, and not worry about his baby mama drama. And just be able to focus on that team because they were really good in the beginning of the year last year until Zion got hurt. Once Zion got hurt, they plummeted, missed the playoffs. So now they're staying healthy. They're being able to go out. And Willie Green's going to get himself an award, and it'll be fun.
All right, so with that, we will wrap up our NBA segment, and now we will continue our top 10 series as we continue to rank different positions across the 3 sports leagues. We have ranked every NBA position within this series, so because of that, there's not really anything to rank in the NBA right now. So instead of doing football, baseball, and basketball, we're going to do football, baseball, and baseball again. We're going to do 2 different positions, third base and shortstop, and we're doing interior offensive line, so guards and centers across the NFL. And we will start with interior offensive line. I will go first. I have some hot takes on this list. I got some young guys creeping into the back end of the top 10 who you wouldn't necessarily think would be here, but they are. Number 1, I think this guy is one of the most underrated players over the last decade. Everybody knows he's the best, but I still don't think he gets enough credit. And I think we need to start talking about Zach Martin as one of the greatest offensive guards to ever play the game. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's phenomenal, and he's still really good at this stage of his career. Number 2, I've got my highest ranked center. He's been a little bit lower this year according to PFF's offensive line gradings, but he's still really good, and I have a hard time going against Jason Kelce as the best center in the NFL. Although Frank Ragnow is not too far behind, I have Ragnow coming in at number 3. He's having another great season in Detroit. It is worth noting, we've got Graham Glasgow and Big V graded in the top 4 of offensive guards, even though those guys kind of trade off right guard, essentially, but just figured I would mention that. Number 4, I've got Chris Lindstrom with the Atlanta Falcons as my second offensive guard. Everybody talks about Quentin Nelson as this highly drafted guard who's really succeeded, but why don't we praise Chris Lindstrom for doing the same thing? And I honestly think he's a little bit better. 5 and 6, I've got teammates Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Humphrey and Thuney have both been very good there, and a big reason why their offensive line is one of the best in the league. Number 7, this is where I have Quentin Nelson. I think he's a tiny bit overrated. I think he's really good, and he's top 10, but I don't think he's like necessarily top 3, where a lot of people would put him. Number 8, I've got Joel Bitonio with the Browns. He has been a stalwart at left guard for a decade now. I think he's really good. And then 9 and 10, this is where things get fun. I've got some young guys here who you may have not been expecting to see in the top 10. Number 9, I've got Tyler Linderbaum with the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like he hasn't really been talked about as really good, but he is, in fact, really good. The Ravens really hit with him. And then number 10, a third-year guy out of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. One of the few bright spots for the Denver Broncos over the last couple of years has been the development of Quinn Miners. I think he's really, really good. I'm ready to put him in the top 10 over other guys like Wyatt Teller, who comes to the top of my head. I'm blanking on everybody else who I considered, but I think Quinn Miners is a total stud, and I think he's ready to be in the top 10 conversation.
I do really like that Quinn Miners conversation. I wish I would have done something like that. But my top 2 is exactly the same. Zach Martin and Jason Kelce at 1 and 2. The first ballot Hall of Famers, one of the best guards, and one of maybe the best center to play the game. I don't know. I can't think of another really good center besides, I think, Bruce Matthews, but he might have been a guard. But those 2 are phenomenal. They're going to be Hall of Famers. 3 and 4, I had the same, but I flip-flopped them. I had Lindstrom at 3, Ragnow at 4. Lindstrom has been really underrated, and Octi helped me see the light, I think, around draft season. And Lindstrom is really good at football. And that Falcons O-line, wow, they drafted Caleb McGarry, I think, in the late first round that year. He's fine. But Lindstrom was a big hit. He has been fantastic for them. And Ragnow is just kind of, it's a center, so they're a lot more underrated. They go under the radar, unless your name is Jason Kelce. But Ragnow is just fantastic. My third center, Creed Humphrey at 5, just like you. He's right there. He is great. He is basically Jason Kelce 2.0, except he was drafted in a round ahead of him. I think he was round 2. Might have been round 3. I don't remember. Pick 6, I have him a little higher than you. I have Joel Bitonio. He is really good for that Browns O-line. Their O-line is really good. Jack Conklin's good. The other tackle who my brain is blanking on, he's good. I can't think of his name, though. That O-line's really good, and I think Joel Bitonio is probably the best guy on that line. 7, I have same spot, Quentin Nelson. I think he's still really good. I think he is maybe on track to make the Hall of Fame, but he's still really good, and I think people do kind of overrate him. He wasn't that bad last year, but he had a big down year last year that kind of made the Colts kind of suck. At number 8, I have one of the younger guys. I was kind of hoping you would throw him in there, but number 8 is Landon Dickerson. We drafted him thinking he'd be the heir apparent to Jason Kelce, and now he is standing there right next to Jason Kelce, made a Pro Bowl year 2, and is looking probably even better in year 3. We have Cam Jurgens to replace Jason Kelce whenever he retires. But Landon Dickerson looks like to be the left guard of the Eagles' future for years to come, along with Jordan Mailata. So that left side of the O-line is going to be phenomenal. At number 9, you mentioned him as honorable mention. I have Wyatt Teller. Again, that Browns O-line is really good, and he is right there alongside Joel Bitonio. At number 10 is where I have Joe Thuney. I think he's really good. The Chiefs O-line has been really good for a while. You mentioned Raven Center, my brain.
Tyler Linderbaum.
I forgot his name already. That guy, Linderbaum. He is great. I just want to mention Tyler Baidaz from the Cowboys. I think he is the highest graded guard or center on PFF, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of really good centers and guards out there. And for him to be one of the highest rated, if not the highest rated, is really good for him. And again, Quinn Miners is indeed him.
When I said that there were some names I was forgetting at the end of my top 10, right as you started talking, I realized it was Landon Dickerson, so I'll mention that I strongly considered him as well. All right, now it is time for our MLB rankings. I will start at shortstop, solely because I'm pretty sure I made a mistake on my third base list, so I'm going to have to fix that within the next 2 minutes. But for shortstop, number 1, this guy's been injury-prone throughout his career, but he's had a career year, and if not for Shohei Ohtani, I think Corey Seager might be the American League MVP, despite the fact that he missed like a decent chunk of the year. But he's fantastic. He's the best offensive shortstop in the game, I would say, comfortably right now. Number 2, I feel like this guy gets kind of quite a bit of hate, but I still think he's top 2. That's Francisco Lindor with the Mets. He's a better offensive player than I think people give him credit for. Obviously, he's great defensively, and he was second in WAR among shortstops behind Corey Seager. Number 3, I have got Trey Turner with the Phillies. This year started off poor, but then he really picked it up. So I think I'm still going to have Trey Turner in the top 3. Number 4, this is where I would have Wander Franco, but the number 1 requirement of this list is that you've never had Chris Hansen tell you to take a seat. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to Wander, so he's not on my list. I have Bo Bichette here. Bo Bichette's been a steady, consistent rock offensively for the Blue Jays over the last few years. Number 5, Bobby Witt Jr. is a superstar with the Kansas City Royals. He was unbelievable during the second half of the season this year. If he was not on the Royals, he would be getting more attention. Number 6, I've got Dansby Swanson with the Chicago Cubs. I think 6, 7, and 8 can be put in pretty much any order for me. I've got Xander Bogaerts at 7 and Carlos Correa at number 8. All guys who have signed big contracts very recently, who have had their ups and downs with their new teams, but I still think they're all really good. Number 9, I think J.P. Crawford's one of the more underrated players in the league. I think he was like 3rd or 4th in WAR among shortstops. I'm going to have him lower than that, but he is quite good. And then number 10, I had a really hard time with this spot. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to put this player because he's young, he's inexperienced, he hasn't even played 90 career games yet. But I don't think there's another shortstop that I could find who's better than Matt McClain right now. So I'm going to put him at number 10. He had a great rookie year with the Cincinnati Reds, and I think he's going to continue to get better.
I had a bit of a struggle with this list. I realized as soon as you were done with your list that I also made a mistake in my shortstop list, but I'm going to figure it out as I go along. At number 1, though, Trey Turner, I think maybe it's my bias peeking through, but his defense has been better than the years past. He's been fantastic in the playoffs, and since he got his standing ovation, he has been, I think, the best shortstop offensively since about August or so. Number 2, though, is where I have Corey Seager. Corey Seager probably would win the MVP if he played a full year, and also Shohei Ohtani didn't exist. I think he was like top 10 in WAR, even though he missed like 3 or 2 months of the year, which is kind of ridiculous. And number 3 is where I have a mistake, so I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm just going to move up my list of 1. We're going to throw Francisco Lindor at 3. He was very underrated the entire year. He did not make the All-Star team for whatever reason. I know we love Perdomo Perdomo here, but instead, it should have been Francisco Lindor because he should have made the All-Star team. I know the Mets were not very good, but he should have been in. Number 4 is where I had Bo Bichette. I think he is one of the bright spots on what ended up being a very disappointing Blue Jays team. I know they made the playoffs, but they didn't really do much in the playoffs. But he offensively was very good, and he's going to be looking to go get a payday, whether it is in Toronto or a different country. At number 5 is where I have superstar phenom Bobby Witt Jr. He is ridiculous. He is raring to go. I know the Royals suck, but he is easily the best player. I thought someone like my brain is forgetting Vinny Pasquantino. He is insane, but that's what I thought he was going to be. And yet Bobby Witt is phenomenal. The first half of the year, he wasn't as good, so he didn't make the All-Star team. But afterward, he was ridiculous and seemed to be one of the best shortstops in the game. So I have him at 5. Just like you, 6, 7, and 8, I have Correa, Swanson, and Bogarts. Just in a different order. Number 6, where I have Carlos Correa. We all hate him because of the Astros scandal. But he's been solid. He hasn't been prime Carlos Correa since joining Minnesota. Excuse me. But he has still been pretty good. And in the playoffs, he will still do Carlos Correa things, whether he is cheating or not. At number 7 is where I have Dansby Swanson. He was really good after signing his big deal with the Chicago Cubs, leaving the Atlanta Braves. I know they didn't make the playoffs, but he was still pretty good for them. And then number 8 is where I have Xander Bogaerts. First half of the year, like the rest of the Padres, he didn't do a lot. But he kind of came back, kind of settled into the Xander Bogaerts that we know and love, and he kind of figured it out a little bit to help the Padres maybe make the playoffs. They missed it out, but they almost did it. Number 9, I fixed my list. We have Willy Adames. He is easily the best hitter on the Brewers roster. Maybe you throw in Christian Yelich, but I'm going to throw Willy Adames there. He, since getting traded from the Rays to the Brewers, has been a lot better than what he was in Tampa. At number 10, I have Jeremy Pena. He was the World Series hero for the Astros last year. He hasn't quite filled the shoes of Carlos Correa, but I think he is looking to make the list. And Wander Franco probably would have been like 3 or something, but unfortunately he likes them a little younger.
All right, so now let's look at third base. And as I mentioned, I had some mistakes with my list, hence why we did shortstop first. So I feel like it's been a very interesting debate who's the best third baseman in the league over the last few years, with the real candidates being Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado, and Nolan Arenado. I'm a big Manny Machado guy, so for a while I thought it was him, but over the last year or two, I've seen the light. Jose Ramirez is the best third baseman in baseball, and I don't think there's an argument for anybody else at this point in time. J-Ram is an unbelievable player. He's a total superstar. 2 through 4 is interesting because both Manny and Arenado had down years. I don't want to push them too far down, but I think I'm ready to have Austin Riley ahead of them for now. So I'm going to have Austin Riley at 2, Manny Machado at 3, and Nolan Arenado at 4. I feel like I just can't rank Manny and Arenado lower, especially because they did have good stretches during the year. Manny Machado, for example, was really good after the All-Star break. Number 5, I have Rafael Devers with the Red Sox. The guy hits absolute tanks. And then after that, I had a really hard time with the orders. So this is what I have for now. I don't feel great about it. Number 6, I have Matt Chapman with Toronto. He's going to get a big payday this offseason. He's fantastic. Number 7, one of the most underrated players in baseball. People don't talk about Ke'Bryan Hayes the way they should. He is spectacular. He's one of the best defensive players in the league, and he's got a good bat. I get that he's on the Pirates, who aren't talked about a lot, but Ke'Bryan Hayes is a total stud. Number 8, I've got Alex Bregman with the Astros. I initially noticed that he was not on my list 5 minutes ago, and, well, he absolutely should be, so I made sure to add him. Number 9 is where I'm going to put Gunnar Henderson. Henderson led all third basemen in WAR this year. He was a lot better than the 9th best third baseman in the league this year, but a lot of these guys like Manny and Arenado, they've been good for a decade. I can't push them too far down, but I expect Gunnar to continue to rise, and I think within a few short years, he's going to be number 1 on this list. And then number 10, another guy who I did not initially have is Alec Bohm, and that is because ESPN is listing him as a first baseman. So when I was sorting through WAR by third base, he was not on the list. Thankfully, I realized, and it's only because I thought about it for a second, and I was like, Nickinator's probably going to overrate him. And then I was like, oh shoot, I don't have him on my list at all, and he probably should be. I originally had Isaac Paredes in Tampa Bay on the list. He's been really good. I originally had Max Muncy on my list as well, and I thought about Ryan McMahon in Colorado, but I think Alec Bohm is better than all of those guys for now. Watch out for Isaac Paredes, though. Tiger legend. I think there's a strong argument for him in the top 10. He was definitely top 10 this year specifically, but again, I'm still going to give love to some of the older players who I trust will bounce back.
Shout out Alec Bohm. I would have been so upset at you for not having that. But that's really weird that he's on first base because he played third base like the entire year. I don't know why that's there. But regardless, I have joined you in the agenda that Jose Ramirez is the best third baseman in the league, and I don't think it's close. We've seen sort of stumbles from Machado and Arenado. I know Arenado and Machado had MVP-like years last year, so this year naturally they wouldn't perform as well. But they didn't perform really to their career standards either. I know they're getting older with time. I know the Padres and Cardinals were both very disappointing this year. But Jose Ramirez is also getting older. The Guardians also digressed. And yet Jose Ramirez is still putting up crazy numbers. I mentioned Bryce Harper earlier, how he deserves a ring. Jose Ramirez is one of the guys that also deserves a ring really bad. He needs a ring. And if he retires with no ring, I'll be extremely upset. And I'm not even a Guardians fan. But 2 and 3 is where I do have Arenado and Machado in that order. I thought about putting Riley above them, but I think just because of how long Arenado and Machado have been good, and Riley has only started getting good past 2 or so years, maybe 3, into where he started becoming that superstar. So I have Riley at 4. Maybe it's me not liking the Braves coming out, but I think those 4 are definitely the 4 best third basemen in the league. At number 5, normally you would see Rafael Devers here. That's been the consensus for the last few years, is that those are the best 5 third basemen. I have Devers at 6 because Gunnar Henderson is that dude. Gunnar Henderson is so good. He started really bad in the first month of this year, but after that he turned up a notch. I have seen this dude play in real life. I saw him play in AAA for the Norfolk Tides. I am walking distance from the stadium right now. He is insane. He is ridiculous. I've watched him multiple times. I think I have a hat with his signature on it. He is ridiculous. I love watching this guy. I love seeing what he can do, seeing his climb up through the minors. And he, along with Adley Rutschman, was able to help carry this Orioles offense to the postseason. Gunnar Henderson is that dude. And I think as we see guys like Ramirez, Arenado, and Machado digress as they get older, we're going to see Gunnar Henderson go into a spotlight. And if he ends up winning an MVP, if Shohei Ohtani leaves and goes to the National League, we'll see Gunnar Henderson win MVP in the next 2 or 3 years. And I would not be shocked about that. As I said, 6, where I have Devers. He hits bombs. His defense is really bad. I saw a stat earlier this year where I think he's double the amount of errors at third base in the past 5 years than any other third baseman in the league. And that's saying a lot. I know third basemen aren't the greatest at defending, besides Arenado or Machado. But you got to at least be an average defender. You can't be that bad. 7 is where I have Alex Bregman. You almost forgot him, but he is still good. I don't think he is what he was back in 2017, 2018, but he is still really good at baseball. He's going to help these Astros team go out and possibly win a 3rd World Series. Number 8 is where I have Matt Chapman. The first half of the year, he was extremely good. He looked like one of the best infielders in the league. And in the second half of the year, he came back to earth. He's been about a league average hitter his career, but he has the defense of Nolan Arenado, so he is really good at defending, but his bat is hot and cold every now and then, but I still got to show him some love. Number 9 is where I have Alec Bohm. He is indeed him. He has not been all that good in the playoffs, which kind of sucks, but I love seeing some bombers, as you will. I just love Alec Bohm. I know a year ago it looked like he was out the door, but he picked it up a notch, and he has been extremely good, one of the best contact hitters at the position. I just love what he brings to the table for this offense. Number 10 is where I have Ke'Bryan Hayes. I didn't forget about him, more or less, but I realized that I should put him on this list as opposed to the other guys I thought about. But he is really good for that Pirates offense. You always look at Brian Reynolds. You look at O'Neal Cruz when he's not injured. But Ke'Bryan Hayes, since coming up into the league, has been really good. So I think he has to get some love, at least even if it's number 10. I looked at guys like Isaac Paredes. I looked at Josh Jung a little bit. I thought about it, but I realized Ke'Bryan Hayes is better than him. Oppo's better than him. He should not be on this list. He could be in the next few years, as we see a lot of these guys digress, like Chapman, Devers, Machado, Arenado, J-Ram. He could be on this list in a few years, but I think right now this is probably the 10. You could throw in 1 or 2 other guys. You mentioned Max Muncy, but he's, at this point, he's probably just a DH. His defense is not all that good. He shorted last night. He had a couple bobbles in at third base. He plays second to base a lot more. and he just is basically just a DH, except he's just a little better at defense than like Kyle Schwarber. But that's my 10. Gunnar Henderson is that dude.
All right, so that'll pretty much just wrap it up here. I will point out, though, as you said, Rafael Devers was 6 before you said who was number 5. I was already writing Gunnar Henderson's name down. I saw it coming. Can't blame you for ranking him that high because that kid is a stud. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. Another fun one here in the books. If you have any final words for us before we sign off, let them rip.
Not much as always. Just Red October and ball go boom.
Ball does go boom. So hope everyone enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.